Welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, where we will discuss all things that impact soccer coaching across all levels and ages. Please listen, enjoy, and share your thoughts on the discussions at the Soccer Coaching Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm your other host, Mark.
Good to have you back, Mark. We
Thank
missed
you.
you last week.
Yeah, a week off.
Slacking.
I must say I was extremely disappointed to miss the kind of session last week with Kieran. Obviously, I listened back as soon as it was released, and I thought it was excellent, really, really good. Some of the stuff in there was just absolutely spot on, and I like the fact that you kind of try to bring it back to the foundation phase a little bit, and Kieran kind of responded and had some some fantastic input and kind of tips as well. I just thought it was a really, really good session, and I can see that the audience or the kind of listeners really, really appreciate it as well.
Responded well. Did you give it 5 stars? And good for you.
I've given it 5 stars. Yeah, well, I gave you 1 star. I gave Kieran 10, so it kind of averaged to about 5.
Kieran was superb. I mean, his knowledge is second to none on that. On Rondo's and positional play, obviously, but just more broadly. And he was so accommodating in trying to help me understand it and work back through the process. I mean, to be fair to the guy, we spoke a good hour before, a good hour afterwards. So, what we actually got on recorded was just part of the conversation. But
brilliant.
Yeah, it was great. And the hope here is, not the hope we're going to make Kieran do this. Friend of the show, Kieran. Now we're getting back on 6 months or so time and get an update on how he's going with this project, which sounds really exciting, and some great stuff there. Something we'll be following closely and getting involved in. I know the work he's doing is going to be a massive help to coaches, and we'll be following that closely and reporting back how we're using it, and we'll get Kieran back on. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, good stuff. Well, it's good to have you back this week. We probably can't start without mentioning about. We can avoid QPR because they didn't play this weekend.
Didn't lose this weekend.
Unbeaten this weekend. But we did go and watch England play on Friday night.
We did. It was almost a privilege to be there watching them play. Some of the football was just pretty impressive, right? And especially given the age of some of the players on the pitch, it was spectacular. Yeah. And even I watched Monday night. Monday night was excellent as well. Yeah. Watched on TV.
10 goals in 2 games.
Exactly. Yeah.
For England, isn't it?
Really good. Yeah.
It was just good to see, and when you see it live, you do get a sense for it. They just played with freedom, didn't they? Freedom and purpose was the 2 things that came through to me, and this goes back. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a bit more in a minute or two. But this does go back to what's been put in place over a number of years, and the FA do get a lot of criticism, and sometimes it's justified, but it isn't. I imagine it's quite hard work doing what they have to do, keep a country happy with high expectations. But all the years of kind of things not clicking in with arguably some pretty strong players to see how they played on Friday and again on Monday night with just that freedom, the creativity, confidence. It was fun to watch, and it was quite proud to watch, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think just a couple of things that I really noticed. One was the way England keep possession of the ball now, and they've been like that for a little while. They've really the style's really changed, but the movement both on Friday and Monday was just exceptional. Yeah. And no disrespect to the teams they played, they're obviously not the strongest nations in the world, but you still got to beat who's in front of you, and they just couldn't handle the movement. It was very, very impressive. And also add to that, there was 1 or 2 players missing as well. There was no Rashford, no Lingard. Yep. Henderson went off injured. Henderson didn't start on Monday, so
there's a whole pool of players there, right? To tap into. And what I was quite pleased with is the progress they've made since the World Cup. Yeah. Again, you can see how they use the ball better. I mean, they tied against Croatia in the World Cup, and you can see that we had some of those older habits that we've seen over many years with England teams, where they can work really hard, but over tournaments that can tire you out. And Croatia punished us for that, and I think this England team's looking like they move the ball better and they can survive longer in tournaments because they won't be so physically tired. Plus, they got a pool of players they can tap into. Yeah, and it's all part of the DNA, right? And I mean, there's 2 things to think about here. Now, the first thing that can't be overlooked, and it's no coincidence that national sides seem to do pretty well in countries where Pep Guardiola is coaching. Yeah, okay. I mean, and you can't ignore that. Obviously, with the Spanish team back in 2010, and obviously with the German team when he was at Bayern Munich, and now the England team when he was at Man City. I mean, there is a correlation there, and there's a million other things going on as well. But you can't ignore that. And some of the football that England played, it was Man City-esque at times, and that had its impact. But I'm sure maybe more important than that is the whole England DNA thing and what's gone on there over I don't know, 10 years maybe. And we've seen part of that at the foundation phase, and we'll see more of that this evening. But it shows you, doesn't it, if you have the right setup with the right environment, and you put the right practices in early enough, and you focus on the process rather than the outcomes do come eventually.
Yep.
And these young lads that are playing with confidence and, you know, expressing themselves and staying on the ball, all the way from the back to the front. It's shining through.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Is it a correlation or a coincidence? I'm not sure. One could argue either way. But what I would say is players like Walker and Sterling have definitely matured, have definitely improved and developed since they've been at Man City under Guardiola. There's no doubt about it. That confidence that Sterling's got, he was almost unplayable on Friday, and Monday night he was equally as good when he kind of switched wings, and it's exciting times for sure.
And confidence is a big thing, isn't it? Confidence is probably the key word there, and one of the things that certainly England teams have lacked historically in the past. And look, it's not an England podcast episode, but it's just important to use that as a reference point in the sense that, you know what, if you do plan right, and countries have done it before, haven't they?
Yeah.
You know, they had that longer plan. France done it back in the 90s, didn't they, to do what they did in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Well, they're still doing it now as well,
and
right?
again, and you know, and then they rebuild again, don't they, a little bit? But I think England were slow on having that kind of longer term planning in place, and finally, hopefully, we might even see us do something, you know, beyond their expectations.
Yeah, so maybe we'll save the England podcast until we win the European Championships or World Cup, all right? We'll pencil that one in.
Yeah, all right.
So just on the England DNA then, so tonight we're both at the Middlesex FA Pete Sturgis event.
We are.
We've both seen him in action before.
I feel like the group is.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And again, he's very engaging to listen to. And he's also putting on a practical session tonight, which our players at Ickenham Youth have got the privilege of participating in, which would be fantastic for them. So the under-10s at Ickenham are involved in that tonight. So I think it's going to be a good experience all round, I'm hoping.
Definitely. I mean, for those that don't know Pete Sturgis, I'm sure most people in England do. But for those across the globe that listen, Pete looks after the foundation phase for the England FA DNA, I think is the right way of putting it. So he's really responsible for trying to ensure as much as he possibly can that coaches out there have the best possible knowledge to do the right things with the younger players, right? That's the idea. And he's been on these road shows for 2 years, I think now, going around the country and visiting the county FAs that we have over in England, and just putting on these workshops with coaches to show them, you know, what they believe is best practice for these age groups. And it's the stuff you would expect to see. Be on the ball, stay on the ball, you know, freedom, creativity, be brave, make mistakes, all those things that, you know, probably historically and arguably still we're not doing enough in this country, particularly at the grassroots level where the biggest pool of players have come from. And I think their expectation, or their hope is that if we can raise the bar across all those tens of thousands of young players that go out and play grassroots football and get them doing the right things on the ball from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then that filters up. And then, you know, those that shine a bit more and get picked up by the academies at a slightly higher level and being challenged by more players below them that are at a higher level. And, you know, eventually that filters through to what we see now, you know, with the England squad. And it's nice to be close to it this evening, and I'm sure the boys will love it, being involved. And as for always, I'm sure we'll learn loads too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other thing is that he's big in creating the right environment as well at training. There's something that we've spoken about, something we really keeps coming up, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're really big on as well, and it's great to listen to him. And actually, there's a book out. He's got a book out that's I think it's just a futsal based book, but there's a lot of stuff in there about creating the right environment and going about things the right way. So it's very good. It's well worth a read.
Right, we'll try and put it in the show notes so we can find it, and people can find that. Okay, so before we get on today's episode, we did have a question come in through Twitter. So today we are going to be talking about interventions and also this concept of counter coaching, which I think is quite interesting, and we can bat that around a little bit and see where we're at. Yep. But we've had a few questions actually. Some we're going to pick up a bit later on in different episodes because they relate more specifically to different things. But this one I just wanted to mention quickly. I think we spoke about it before, but through Twitter we had an email from, I think it's Joe, and he was just asking about 5-a-side formations, and he coaches a U6 team. And what's quite so in England, if under 6s, 7s, and 8s, they'll play 5-a-side football. And I think it's probably fair to say that most teams adopt a 1-2-1 formation. Obviously, you've got the goalkeeper, so keeper then a 1-2-1 formation. So you've got your defender, you've got your two midfield players, and you've got your front player. We did that, didn't we, Mark?
Yes,
for a number of years with the teams that we had when we had them a bit younger, a few years back. And I totally understand that. It's kind of easy to understand your role in that as a player. If you're a defender, what you've got to do. If you're a midfield player, you know what you've got to do. If you're a front player, you know what you've got to do. So I get that. It's very clear. You've got one role to perform in that particular position. And you can kind of coach around that. And you would tend to find that probably players' natural strengths at that age gravitate towards certain positions, or their desire to do certain things on the pitch, whether that's the goalkeeper, defender, the midfield, or the front players. Yeah. So it totally works, and it is effective, and it's one of those formations that's pretty solid. It doesn't leave you exposed, and it's good for probably being competitive in most matches. There are plenty of other formations, really. Even in five-a-side, you can do a whole bunch of different things there, and we've tried out most of those. But if you're looking at adopting a formation solely for the benefit of developing the players, or as much as possible for developing the players, we ended up landing on a 2-2 formation, maybe more by chance than anything else, because we saw someone else doing it, and we thought that looked good. They were doing it for different reasons, I think, but we saw the benefits of it. So I'm just going to briefly, we haven't got long, but I'll briefly explain the 2-2 formation and some of the rationale behind it. And maybe you can mention your comments and thoughts on it, and then we'll pick it up at a later episode about formations maybe, but just to answer Joe's question. So the ways we went for the 2-2 formation is, obviously you've got your goalkeeper. Now in the 2-2 formation, we call them back players and front players. So you've got a left back player, a right back player, a left front player, and a right front player. We don't use defenders or attackers for obvious reasons. If the other team's got the ball, we are all defenders. You've got a first defender, a second defender, a third defender, a fourth defender, depending on who's closest to the ball. If we've got the ball, then we're all attackers. The person on the ball is the first attacker, the next person closest, second attacker, and like that. So we work around that a bit, but we don't use the words attackers and defenders in relation to positions. It's just about who's in possession of the ball. So with the 2-2 formation, the back and front players, we wanted to give as much creative freedom to the players as possible. So in their games, we've only got a couple of real instructions, if you like, from us as coaches. So one word we use is balance. So the idea being that one of the back players is more than welcome to support the two front players when they think it's appropriate to do so. We call that balance, and we'd ask the players why won't both go up to support, and they will tell you because obviously that leaves us exposed at the back and there's no one there to defend and everything else, so which is right. So they can do that to support. Who does that is entirely their choice. Now we've done this since the boys were under sixes, so we've never told which player to go and which player to stay. They've always worked it out for themselves. They haven't always worked it out for themselves correctly, but they've certainly tried. But that's been their learning as part of that. So by doing that, they have to communicate and talk to each other. They have to look at each other. They have to scan and be aware of what's going on around them. They have to think about the game and anticipation and try and put some game intelligence into that without us telling them from the side what to do. And I think we're pretty good at not doing that around those points. At some points, I could certainly improve on where I give too many instructions, even though I try not to. I certainly do. But around that is a big thing. That's their learn for them. And it works the same way with the front players. So if the other team's got the ball and they're pressing against us and they're in our half of the pitch, then one of the front players should come back to support the back two players. Who that is down to them, entirely down to them. And again, they should communicate and do that. So you've got the communication element there to it, which is a massive point of this. But it's not just the communication, it's them having to look around, scan and be aware. The other thing what you've got is left and right. So the natural formation they're having the two left-sided and two right-sided players means that you can play players who are left-footed on the left side and right-footed on the right side. But likewise, you can swap them around. So where you've got the 1-2-1 formation, where the back of the front player is just kind of everywhere, or neither left nor right, arguably, you can't really do that. So you've got the ability then to, if the game is going well for you or whatever, you just want to challenge the players, you can put your left side player on the right hand side of midfield, or the front players, or the left footed player as right back position to really challenge them, especially when receiving the ball from the goalkeeper. There's just ways in which you can challenge the players at that young age to do different things that the 1-2-1 won't allow you to do. And I would say the two biggest ones are the left and right side and around the balance. The other thing, what I feel like it does is it means that really at any point during the game you're always playing arguably at least two positions. because if you're a back player, well, you're a back player until you go forward and then you're a front player. So you're always playing two. And in modern football, you're not often stuck doing one thing in a game. Whether you're making it within a minute, you could be throwing three different positions depending on how the game unfolds. And if we're trying to prepare these young players for what could be the modern game in 10 or 15 years' time, then not having them do one thing in a game and therefore limiting their cognitive processes and dealing with that and stretch them and challenge them more, I think the 2-2 does that. Yeah. So, if I'm playing left back in our team as a right-footed player, I've got to think about my body shape receiving the ball. I've got to think about when I support. I've got to think about what my teammates doing. I've got to think about how I defend well when the other team's got the ball, how I attack and support the play. If I'm playing as a defender in the 1-2-1 formation, I've just got to defend. Yeah, important still, and some good practice. That's all I've got to do. So my thinking isn't as challenged. I'm not being challenged as much as I might be cognitively by doing that. Same way as if I'm playing up front in that 1-2-1 or in the wide positions. Does that kind of make sense as to why we... Have I explained that all right, Mark?
Yeah. I don't think it was brief, but I think you've explained it very well, to be honest.
It's brief for me.
Yeah, I think you've obviously lived and breathed that formation now for nearly kind of 2 seasons. We've been through the process earlier when we had 1-2-1. We moved to 2-2 kind of late in the development for what is my under 10 team now. But you introduced it for your under 16 from the start. And I think it works. It works really, really well. I think there's a lot of initial investment up front in terms of players understanding what's being asked of them. The boys are understanding what's being asked of them. But I think it just gives them, as you said, so many more decision-making opportunities. The ability to play it on different parts of the pitch. I just think it works really well. And the way that you run the team is that the players or the boys would play in all the different positions. So if they're left foot, they play on the right hand side. If they're right foot, they play on the left hand side. You probably got 1 or 2 players or boys which are more naturally attacking. They got very quick feet, but they play equal game time at the back and actually equal game time in goal as well. So it kind of helps that kind of holistic learning of football. Now I know there'll be a lot of people out there, and I would love to hear from them that say actually formations at under 7s, under 6s don't really make a lot of difference. I don't necessarily agree with that argument. I understand it 100%, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I think you still need to have a little bit of organisation and shape, but within that you need to give creative freedom to the players to be able to express themselves, to be able to make decisions, so that would aid their development. And I think this formation, 2-2 formation, does that. And does it very well, and I think the whole thing around the communication is really good, because you can hear the boys, and you couldn't really hear them at under 6s. You could hear a little bit towards the end of under 6s, but certainly from under 7s onwards, you can hear them now when one of them's going forward saying, "I'm going forward to support," or you can hear them saying, "Narrow, get narrow," and it's like these they were 6 when they were doing this, and they're only 7 now, and it's pretty phenomenal to kind of see that, and just shows what you can do if you get the right environment, you get the right structure for them to be able to develop and learn. I think it's good.
Thanks, Mark. And you're right, because you're asking more of the players to do more thinking themselves. You do need to put some time in. That's a long-term part, right? It won't happen. The 1-2-1's quite straightforward. You've got a job to do, go and do that one job, and we'll work on that. The 2-2, you're asking the players to do a couple of things depending on how the game's going. And you're right, we also, so on that basis as well, on the 1-2-1, where you may not have many people that want to play the back player there, the defender. In our formation, everyone plays everywhere. They'll play at least 2 positions every game, sometimes 3 or 4, but at least 2, and that'll be a front and a back position guaranteed. Left or right, that depends on what we're doing. And a goalkeeper usually, so they play 2 or 3 positions depending on what's going on. So no one moans about that. They get a time in the play front, get some at the back, they get a time to play in goal. So again, you take all that stuff out of it as well, and. Their physical literacy and development isn't being limited, because if they're just doing one thing, if they're just a back player in a 1-2-1 formation, the game's always in front of them. How they move their body is going to be different, because that requires different physical challenges to if you're going to be a midfield player where you're very dynamic and the game's all round you 360 degrees, or a front player which can look very different, or a goalkeeper again. So, just trying to be aware of their physical development, of their cognitive development, of their communication, of their understanding of the game, all these things. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think the 2-2 does more than most of the formations do. But as a footnote to that, what I would say is, and this is what we're going to be doing after the spring break, after Easter, is different formations. Let's try a few different things out because we loved all 2-2. It's worked well for us. It hasn't made us. I don't think it's made us more competitive in games. In fact, I think it's made it harder for us in games sometimes to do things because the boys have to do a bit more maybe than playing against a 1-2-1 formation. But it stretched them. But now the chance is to build on for that now and try a couple different things out, and then they can choose. Then the plan B and the under 8s, they choose. Okay, the game's going like this. What do you think we could do? Should we stick to the 2-2? Should we do the 1-2-1? Should we do a 1-3? 1-1-2, whatever they want to do. But we'll plant some seeds in there. But for me, it just spent a year to 18 months of them really understanding, football on the smallest possible scale for us on the 5-a-side format. At a competitive level is it just seems like the best way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your point is a good one about just about not overcoaching them. And I know that I hear all the time about just let them play. They're just 7-year-olds and all this. And I do get that. And yes, you certainly overcoaching is probably worse than not coaching at all. But some structure, some guidance. Exactly. That's our job, right? The playground's good for just letting them play, and 100%. But we're just trying to add in as much as necessary, but a little as possible guidance and structure around that to give the freedom and creativity for them to develop, but also in a way in which is going to be most positive for their long-term outcomes.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? You're just setting a structure up for them to be on the pitch, which allows them the creative freedom, decision-making opportunities,
and challenges them.
Yeah, and understand the game. So yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, it's good. That wasn't brief, was it?
It wasn't brief. No,
we've got about 20 minutes left to cover.
I think the challenge. Just one final thing. I think the challenge for Joe, and it'd be great to hear back from him if he does try the 2-2 formation. It'd be great to hear back as to how he gets on and how he finds it different to the 1-2-1 formation.
Yeah, but that would be a good point. That'd be great to hear. But your first point's right. It won't be one of those things. It's not as easy for the players to pick up as quickly from my experience. So persevere with it. Don't do it on one game and just throw it at them and see what happens. Because, the 1-2-1 is easier in many states for the players to get understanding, which is why I'd argue it's probably the wrong one because it's so much too easy. The 2-2 stretches them more. Yeah.
And just one final point, actually. Whilst we're talking about formations, my team are moving to 9-a-side next season. So we're just starting to play some 9-a-side friendlies. I'm looking at lots of different formations that I can play, and there's many more combinations when you get to 9-a-side. So it's quite exciting, especially from a coaching standpoint. It's interesting.
Well, what might be good then, because you just finished 7-a-side now, and we're heading into with the younger ones. Maybe we could do an episode around 7-a-side and formations and what you've experienced and what's worked for you, what you've played against and stuff, and what's worked. Share that out, and then we can maybe get some thoughts on 9-a-side moving forward as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I think if there's anyone listening out there that's got views on 9-a-side, 7-a-side formations, please kind of send them in to us. Yeah, now's the time. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Doesn't want to turn into QPR. So.
Calling out for help.
Calling out for help. Brilliant. All right. Well, look, we are going to try and wrap this up in 20 minutes. So we've got to cover quite a big topic. So interventions and this concept of counter coaching. So firstly, Mark, go on. What are interventions?
Good question. So I think coaching interventions, for me, it's a way of engaging with the players and really supporting them in their development, and also kind of supporting the session. That's the way I see it. For me, it's all around communication and how you go about it, and there's different ways you can go about it, and there's different styles that we're gonna talk through. But for me, it's all about that kind of engagement with the players and how it supports their development and supports the session, making sure you're getting your key coaching points out there. Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah. So the different ways in which you can support the players with messages.
Yeah.
And essentially it's communication, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a massive word, isn't it? And it's a massive part of what we do.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
I think with the thing with interventions is like it can be, you could have a really good session, but if the interventions are wrong, it can really undermine it, right?
Yes.
And likewise, if they're spot on, then it can really add that value to it. When someone make or break a session, but it can have a big impact on how effective the session is, right?
I think that's the point. Is how effective that session, how it can help how effective that session is for the players. I think that's the key point, right?
Particularly individually, collectively definitely, but particularly I think on a one-to-one basis, because knowing your players and knowing how best to communicate to them and the right interventions makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think absolutely, and I think there's for me, there's probably two, in terms of interventions, I see it as two types of interventions.
Okay.
Now, within those interventions, there are different styles.
Okay.
But I think you've got individual interventions, so when you're speaking individually to players about things, and there's ways you can go about that. So, for example, I'm quite a big fan of actually during the training session, I would kind of try and position myself in the middle of the game. I won't get.
It's all about you.
It's all about me. Yeah. I won't get involved in the game unless I absolutely need to.
Yeah,
no, I won't get involved in the game.
Players show you up.
So I can try and position myself in the game, in an area where it's not going to interfere.
Why?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons. One, I think you get a different perspective on things rather than standing on the side or standing behind the goal.
Yeah.
I do that a little bit as well, but I like being in the middle because you can see a different perspective. You can see actually movement. You can see what they can see. You can actually hear them. You can hear what they're saying, how they're talking to each other. But also, I like the fact that you can actually just have a quiet word with someone. So rather than calling them over, so if you want to do an individual intervention, rather than calling them over to the touchline, you can just have a little chat with them whilst they're walking back, or if it's a goal kick or something. Yeah. You can say, right, that was I liked what you did there, but what else could you have done? So it's not really kind of telling them. I'm kind of asking what else they could have done, trying to get some answers out of them. So that's why I like to be on the pitch. Now it does vary. Obviously, you can't do that in a Sunday match. You're on the side, so I guess your individual intervention would be different there. It would perhaps be either you're talking to the player whilst he's playing, or whilst the moment permits to talk to him quickly, or maybe you kind of call him off the pitch for a minute and you kind of bring him over to the tactics board. What could you have done here? What's your thinking, your positioning, things like that. So that, to me, that's what I try to do from an individual intervention basis.
With regards, I mean, there's a whole host of interventions, really, isn't it? But they're kind of grouped around into, is it like 5 main categories?
Yeah.
Which ones? I think I did the youth modules with the FA, and I think it might have been Youth Mod 3, but it's a big thing, the intervention. They make a big point of it, and fair play to them, because I think it's important to coach this stuff for us as coaches. But what are the main options we've got as coaches in with regards to intervention?
Yeah, and it's big on the new level 2 as well.
Is it as well? Okay, maybe they put that more stuff in there then, because that's good to hear, because it wasn't on the old level 2. But well, what are the main ones that there are?
You've obviously, the first one you got is command, right? Okay. You've got your command intervention. So this is where you're quite directive. You're quite firm in what you're saying to the players. You've got guidance.
You're telling them, really.
You're telling them. You're telling them.
I want you to do this.
Yeah. You've got guided discovery, which I guess is you're kind of trying to guide players to the answer. You may be giving them little snippets of information, or asking them kind of little bits of questions. You're trying to guide them to where.
Show me how to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or try this and see what happens.
Yeah, you've got question and answers, approach, which I guess again is a little bit, maybe feeds a bit into your guided discovery as well. Maybe there's a little overlap there. And then you've got, I guess, observation demonstration.
Yeah.
Which can be quite a powerful way of doing it, actually, and it can be very, I think, motivating for some of the players that are doing that demonstrating, for example.
So watch how Jimmy does this, or
exactly,
count how many times Sarah can do that, and
exactly.
Trial and error is a lot.
And trial and error as well.
Okay. I think I made a mistake. I was saying guide discovery is try this, but that's not actually right, is it? Because trial and error is try this. So guide discovery is show me this, or give a go at that kind of thing. I mean, these aren't completely segregated, are they? They kind of overlap in certain ways.
Yeah.
So the question, I guess, then, is us as coaches is, do we practice these enough? Do we understand how to use them enough? Do we know how to use them at the right times in the right way? What's your thoughts on this? I mean, how do you use them, Mark? And do you lean towards one or two more than others, or have you honed your skills on these?
I would say it's work in progress, as most things are.
I think you're good at. I'm thinking out loud now, but I think you're good at your interventions.
What I would say, I think sometimes you're a little bit naturally, you go to one type of intervention, and that's maybe your go-to approach.
So that's because that suits you or suits your players.
I That's a good question. It should be because it suits your players, but I think it's actually because it suits you. That's naturally you go to that. That's what you. But I think as a coach who's learning and trying to improve, you then should then realise actually in certain situations and with certain players, different coaching styles will work better. Yeah, because don't forget if you've got a player that's very maybe not high in confidence or perhaps a bit lower self-esteem or is a quiet boy or girl, I think that using a command approach actually may have quite a negative impact. Yeah. Whereas I think if you're using guided discovery or if you're using demonstration with them, then that can really maybe actually start to boost their confidence. You can see actually when they get to the answer, they smile and things like that. Whereas using a command, you won't get that.
That's the key point there, isn't it? And I never thought back to you said it then, but what you're trying to do with your interventions, I guess, is really find the best way in which to develop the player's confidence to improve what they're practicing. Isn't it? And is that? And you're right. And if you take the wrong intervention to the wrong player or the wrong group of players that knocks the confidence the wrong way, you just, you're fighting an uphill battle straight away. If you can pick the right intervention that's going to allow the player to get the most confidence to keep going on what they're trying to do, and that may be command. It may be the thing they need. Actually, that's how they respond well to that. Yeah. But it may not be. But if you know what the options are and how to use them effectively, and then you can reach your toolbox to use the right one for the right player at the right time. Yep. Wow, what a massive difference that makes to getting your coaching points across in your session. Yeah,
hugely. And I think there's an argument to say that actually you should use all of the different coaching styles. Depends on the players, depends on the situation. I'm probably not a massive fan of using command, but I do use it when I need to use it. Yeah. But I think actually as a coach, you should probably use all of those different
Well, there's pros and cons to all of them, right? Yeah, I guess, Exactly. My thing is, I don't know, and I know I don't do this, but I don't think we practice these enough as coaches. And even in our session plans, I don't put in my interventions in my session plan. Part of that is because you don't know necessarily when you're going to need to intervene, but actually, you probably do if you think about it. It's only when you're progressing your sessions along, you can kind of see the bits that are going to trip up the players at certain points. Yeah. And then it wouldn't hurt me to have a little plan in my head thinking, okay, if little Billy's going to struggle on this, my best way of doing this is to be next to his side and asking this question, or doing, and using this statement to encourage some guided discovery, But if I've not thought about it beforehand, I could lose that in the moment, and that could undermine that session. Yeah. And I plan my sessions out quite a lot with a fair bit of detail, but I've never done that, and I think this is a mistake on my part. And I don't know that because do you know what I do? Like you said, I think I probably use the same probably half a dozen ways of communicating with the players. Yeah. Partly because I think it's right for them, and I know the players well enough, but also because of my limitations. Yeah. And if I'm going to grow, and I do believe interventions are important. If I'm going to grow as a coach, I need to grow my ability to intervene at the right times in the right way. I need to practice it more. Yeah.
I think it's a fair point. I think it's difficult to say I'm going to intervene here or here before the session. I think that's
okay. What if you said then? But if I need to intervene here, I could. Well, how could I do it? What
style? I think exactly. If you could make a note to yourself and say, right, I know that I use command a lot, which you don't, but I use it a lot. Today, I'm challenging myself to use guided discovery. Yeah. Let me try and use that as much as I can today. Okay. Maybe you could do that before the session, and that would work. I must say, the interventions can be really powerful. And like, for example, last week, one of the players he actually plays a lot of time centre midfield for us, and he scored a goal in training. He received the ball kind of in front of goal, and he opened his body up really well and just kind of slotted it away in the corner. And I was like, wow. Firstly, I've never seen him do that before. Yeah. Secondly, I've not coached him that because I'm primarily a defender. I don't think about scoring goals. And I just thought that was just... I just had to stop the game just very quickly. It wasn't it was a group intervention. It was very short break. And I literally just had to say to the players and like, did you see what this boy just done there? And they were like, yeah, he scored. But then I had to kind of prize out of them, what did he do? Yeah. And then they were saying, well, he shot it in the corner. He shot in the corner. Then I say, right, what did he do with his body shape? And it was just really powerful. You could see the players were really engaging in that point. So it was a group intervention, and that was something I wanted to mention at the beginning about group and individual, and we kind of got away on different part. But it was a group intervention, and it was just really good because it was demonstrating to them this is what you can do. But also there was a bit of guided discovery in there. There was question and answers in there. So it was just a really powerful, I thought it was a very powerful kind of intervention.
What I love about that is, and again, maybe that's one thing, if you look at percentage-wise, how much we use interventions, how many of those are to correct mistakes and errors, those interventions, rather than recognising good practice.
Yes.
And I am definitely guilty of that. And, not doing enough time saying, actually, you know what, wow, not just about what could we have done better there, or what could you have done instead, or, what was your thoughts, what did you see? Just, that was brilliant, talk me through it. What did you do? How did you do that? Let's tell everyone what you just did there. So a point to coaches and point to myself is interventions are really valuable, but use them for highlighting good practice as well as things that aren't quite working.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like being positive in your intervention as much as you can is key. Again, I guess it comes back to effective communication, but I think if you're too negative in terms of what the feedback you're giving, then it's not going to be well received. But I think just being positive all the time, I think it helps, right? And again, there's lots of books out there you can read on this stuff.
There's loads, isn't there? Yeah, there's lots. I think there's lots of books around it, but I think it's one thing you've got to practice, haven't you? Like, let's take Q&A, for example, because I do a lot of Q&A.
Yeah.
And I work in education, so this is a big part of what we do in teaching too. But what I would say is, for me, it's probably one of the most... can often be the most poorly used one. And so what I mean is, if you've got a group of players doing Q&A, this is the way it can often be misused, if you like, or poorly used. Is you use closed questions.
Yes.
You're using questions where the answers are limited based on what the players are just going to give you best guessed answers.
Yeah.
The same 2 or 3 players kind of vocalize the answer first because that's their personalities.
Yeah.
The boys or the players, that are often quite quiet, just kind of stays back and don't say anything.
Yeah.
It's just Q&A can be a brilliant way in which to intervene and test and promote understanding, but also it can be a real false economy if you don't use it right. And I'm sure it's the same for others as well. And we need to practice it to be good at it, like anything, isn't it? But if you're going to use Q&A and you kind of get all the players in and say, right, what did you like about today's session and what was this? If you don't kind of position it in a way that the question is open, there's time for thought, that all the players think could be asked for the answer. Rather than just the one who shouts first. There's just ways in which it could be used to be more effective, and I'm sure that's with all of them. And I just wonder whether or not we as coaches do enough to fine tune that to make sure we're using it right.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. One thing I definitely relate to is around, you've got a group of players. Within that group of players, you're going to have boys that are quite dominant in terms of responding to every question all the time, and actually sometimes the answers they give, they haven't really thought them through. They just want to be
saying what you want, or
saying
what you think you want to hear. They've heard your word, from the session.
Exactly. But it's the ones actually that are not speaking that that I try to focus on a little bit more to kind of to help them with their confidence. And they probably don't like being on the spot when I ask them, but actually over time you can start seeing them coming out of their shells and start answering the questions more. So I think it's a really good point around the different people, the different players you have in your group, and how you
knowing their personalities, making it work for them.
Yeah.
One of the things I do with the players if I'm doing a Q&A, it's not all Q&A, but if I do use Q&A, I'll always say to them, right, put your hands up if you feel you know the answer to this, and then I'll ask the question, and then I don't want them shouting out, and see which hands goes up, and then I make a call on it. If everyone's hands up, we can have a little chat about that and see what's going on, and we'll pick the players, and I'll try and pick carefully and spread that out a little bit, if we've got a few hands not going up, what I might do then is go back into the practice. So, right, okay, hold your thoughts, guys. Appreciate the ones that put their hands up now, but we're going to go back into this, and let's see if we can work with them and see if we can all get back and see if we can notice. So let's go back into the game again, and we'll see what's going on, and we'll come back out in 5 minutes and see it again. No hurry here, Players will learn and pick things up at different times. And it may be that the 2 or 3 put their hands up don't know the answer, and they've got it wrong, and the 2 or 3 that didn't put their hands up actually do know the answer. But let's go back into this before I just tell them what the answer is, or we guess it out of them. We do that. So I think there's such powerful tools if they're used right, that it kind of like when you say about the X's and O's and getting the session plan right, that is important. But probably, arguably, after the environment, this is the next biggest thing. You kind of think, get the environment right, plan your session, but then get the interventions right, because you can kill the session or you can kind of enhance the session by using the right interventions at the right time. And even with behaviour, I think sometimes coaches that we speak to coaches a fair bit that say, how do you deal with player behaviour? We've got 2 players that just, won't listen, won't do this. And you watch sessions and the coaches are lovely people and they're doing their best, but they arguably the session's not always planned out the best, in the sense there could be maybe a little bit too much waiting around, queuing time. But one of the biggest things I see around behaviour, or correlation between poor behaviour and interventions, is just the wrong intervention taking too long. Because if I'm going to pull out a whole group of players or stop everyone and speak for 3 minutes, the 2 players that have got the shortest attention span are going to end up kicking the ball around, doing something they're not supposed to be doing because they're a bit bored. So again, I think you can, then you're firefighting that issue rather than trying to get your points across. And if I could get an intervention that's kind of 30 seconds that works for what I need for this moment, then I'm going to take away all that dead time and trying to deal with the behaviour issues of taking 3 minute intervention. Yeah,
I totally agree. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think like 2 other things that I always try to do with in terms of when I'm speaking to players, and this is probably more general communication points than actual specifically on interventions, although it's all linked. I think one is as in anything in life, making eye contact I think is important, right? So making that eye contact straight away. I think smiling, kind of being, as I said, having that positive
body language.
Body language, exactly.
Speaks volumes. You have that. It speaks more than the words do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that then gets more out of the players. I think if they can see you're engaged, you're positive, you've got eye contact, I think you get more out of them that way as well.
Physically getting down to their level as well, crouching, they're not towering over them and stuff. I mean, it's all pretty basic stuff, but we can forget these things, can't we, quite easily in the moment.
I think it's important. And I think the other big key as well is, which I think a lot of coaches are guilty of this, is actually listening to the responses. Just don't ask the questions, listen to the responses. I know that someone once told me you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Listen twice as much as you
exactly. Yeah. It's really, I think it's really, really important.
And don't guess what the players are telling you. Even if the words, be sure what you're hearing is the correct thing, because
enforce it, right?
Yeah, especially with youngsters who can't always articulate what they want to say in the right way. So just check understanding and check what they're saying is right and stuff. And it's a good point about the communications, about listening as much as if not more so than speak.
Yeah. So I think maybe in terms of how do you do this? How do you differ your interventions from a match day compared to training? And I know we touched on it a little bit earlier. One was around, obviously you can't be in the middle of the pitch on match days, or maybe in collaborative training matches you could be.
Some coaches are.
Some coaches are, yeah. Some coaches are, yeah. But how do you? There's some things that I do, but how do yours differ?
Yeah, I guess if I'm speaking generally, then you probably do see a bit more of a dichotomy, don't you? It's either kind of command stuff, instructions oriented, or it's the one-to-one stuff, isn't it? It's not, because that's your thing, and I'm not saying that's right, but on the pitch, I try and give as little instructions as possible, but I certainly do give instructions, and I certainly probably give too many instructions. And I don't think I'm as bad as a lot, to be honest with you, but I've still got a long way to go to be good at that. And I'm not trying to tell players necessarily what to do, as in pass ball here, do this, shoot, run. But certainly, you're kind of saying, where should you be? What's your position? What could you have done there? What sort of options? Or actually, maybe I can just shut up sometimes, and the players probably know it themselves anyway. Or have that conversation after the game, about when I'll make a note and deal with it then. So I've got to work on that. So I think we're training. I'd probably use more of a mix of all the 5 different options, and I think I'm pretty good. Trial and error, guided discovery, certainly. A lot of observations. I like the players to watch each other. If I see, little Jack something really good, then I'm getting another player to look at that and say, look what he's doing that, and it inspires them on the whole. Can I show you that? Then and at that age it works really well, but probably at most ages it works okay. But I would say what happens on match day is probably because of my own pressures and silliness. It just becomes more limited on what I use and how I use it. My questions are probably a lot shorter. They're probably more closed. They're not as effective. Players probably guess answers rather than know the answers. Not always, but it's just I don't think I use them nearly as well as I do on training, and I probably don't use them as well as I could on training. So,
do you think it's the pressure of? I know there shouldn't be pressure. It's not pressure, but do you think it's probably a little bit more pressure on match days?
It's not pressure in the result of the game, but it's time pressure, isn't it? And I know you get training. Okay, you might only have 90 minutes, but you've really got 90 minutes every week for as long as you want these next 10 years. So there's no real time pressure. That's nonsense. There's time pressure I've got as long as I really need in life. But on match day, you've only got the time on the match there really to kind of work on things in that moment. And even at the half-time talks, things like that, you haven't got long to get your points across. And I think there's that, and I could certainly do better at. Is there a case for sometimes actually not having the intervention, not saying it? If you're not going to be that effective anyway, why say it? Why not just listen more and ask the players what they want and think, and just have it? And maybe that's the learning there for me to understand where they're at in their own minds about the game, rather than tell them stuff.
Yeah, so I think all good points. So I think during matches, I definitely use command, and I think I probably use command actually when we're not in possession of the ball more than when we're in possession of the ball. Yeah, I think when we're in possession of the ball, I generally let the players make their own decisions all the time. I never shout, pass, shoot, dribble. I let them make their own decisions. I think if
you're a defender,
exactly, clear it. But I do. One thing I would say is that I do. If I think a player's made a bad decision on the ball, maybe they should have passed back to the goalkeeper, and then instead of kicking out a play, I would say the person's name, and I would say, what do you think, what else could you have done there? Yeah. And generally 99 times out of 100, they would actually say, they would give you their answer. Okay. I should have passed back to the goalkeeper.
Two things on that one. Right. So first of all then, when would you ask them that?
Yeah.
When would you ask that? Because I'm interested to know. I won't consider it. And the second question would be then, they may know the answer, but maybe there was a reason they chose the option that they did.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And you can't really engage in that discussion whilst the game's going on.
And that's exactly, isn't it? Because what you'd want to ask now is, what did you see?
Yeah.
Because they might say, do you know what, actually, I did about the keeper, but I wasn't confident on my left foot pass back to the keeper and saying, so it's like, yes, I know what the right thing to do was, Mark, but actually I wasn't confident to do it at that moment in time for X reason, or I thought I saw a player running behind there, but but I thought I saw it. So for me, it was the right choice to make, bearing in mind the information. But so the first question is, when would you talk to the player?
So generally,
who's been on the ball and arguably made, inverted commas, a mistake?
So I would, in that situation where they've kicked the ball out instead of perhaps passing it back to the goalkeeper, I would probably ask them straight away. I would say, look, what could you have done there?
Yeah.
And they would normally come out and, as I said, I should have passed it back. But actually, I just give them a thumbs up and that's it. But actually, sometimes they will come back, and if it permits, and say, I couldn't pass it back because there was someone here or there's someone there. Yeah. So they'd sometimes give that feedback as well. And I'm saying, fair enough. Absolutely fair, no problems. So, but not all the players do that, but some of them do that, and then depending on the situation, obviously, if the game's going on, then they can't do that. Or you got the other option; you could just ask them just to come off for a minute or so, and you could have a quick chat with them.
I love that. It's hard though, isn't it?
It is hard, and I think it would need to be something quite significant. I don't do that a lot. I do it from time to time, probably not as much as I should do, and I think that. For me,
so what we're saying is you'd pull the player off literally for like 30-second chat with you, all friendly and nice, not to be berated, just to have a quiet word, talk through what happened, what they saw, then they go back on again. Yeah, that's exactly, it. It's not like it's not a substitution because I made a mistake or being berated for doing something wrong. It's just to have more of a quiet conversation with them in a space that's just you and the player to find out if you can help. In case the situation comes up again, and then they can maybe think about their decision based on the information that you've spoke about.
Yeah, exactly. And you can always put another player on for a minute, and just can use the favour. Exactly, roll a sub on, roll them off. I think I wouldn't necessarily do it just in the situation where you didn't pass it back to the goal. You didn't pass it back to the goalkeeper. I wouldn't bring you off in that situation.
No,
it'd probably be something that I'm seeing a trend in the game.
You've seen it 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 or 5 times happen.
Yeah, maybe positionally they're not kind of quite right, or something like that. Or maybe they're not getting their body shape right when they're receiving it on the back foot, or some. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. Then I would probably, you would need to have a little chat with them and then put them and bring it back on, get their input. So. It's
hard, because I remember thinking to myself at the start of the season, I'm going to not really say anything about any, again, in inverted commas, mistakes or things that I think don't look like, the players intend to do, until I've seen the player do it 3 times. But it's so hard to do that because you want to help, don't you?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But also you don't want to hinder the learning process by being too helpful.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky one, and I guess for this episode, it's just about trying to plant seeds to be mindful of it, isn't it? To coaches, we're not giving the answer by any stretch of the imagination, probably because we're not. We don't do it well enough ourselves just yet. But if you can be thoughtful of how you use interventions, the ones that are out there, maybe think about practicing to get good at them, particularly Q&A, which I think a lot of us think we're probably quite good at, but we could all improve on, I'm sure. It will make for a better coaching session and a better experience for the players. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And I think, look, I'll give you my 3 things that I think... that if someone wanted to take things away, my 3 views on or tips on intervention, one would be try all the different styles.
Yeah.
Find out what is best for your players, what works best for you. So try the different styles. I would say, secondly, keep it positive. As I said, smile, get the eye contact, just keep it as positive as you can. And then I think 3, one that we touched on, I know maybe you got a lot of views on this, but just keep it short and to the point. I think you have long interventions, you kind of just lose the players, and especially if you've got a group intervention, you got 14 boys playing a game, and you're intervening every 5 minutes, or your intervention is lasting 5 minutes. You're going to just lose the players, and you can lose the effectiveness of the game. So for me, they're the 3 things that I would say. Is there anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I think good points. I would just say that don't expect all the children to come up with the same answers, because they won't. And that's what I say, children, all the players. They've got different ways of solving problems, and embrace that. And it may be something you've not thought about yourself, maybe a different solution to the problem that you've not thought about. So embrace it. It might not be what you've got in your coaching notes as a point, but hey, if it's a potential different way of getting about the problem, then let them have it. Embrace the variety. And help children kind of share the answers, or help the players share the answers, so they kind of work together to find solutions to things. So the intervention hasn't got to be all about you and one, or you and a group. It could be them debating with each other. I'd encourage that. Encourage mistakes again. So the intervention, back to your point about recognising good practice as well, but recognise mistakes in a positive way. Love the fact you tried that, little Jimmy. That was brilliant. Didn't work that time, but that is exactly what we're looking for there. Superb. It costs us a goal, don't care, that's on me 100. That is exactly what we're trying to do. Well done, good on you, and that kind of stuff there. So support it, and just making sure the players understand the why. So in your intervention, if you start talking about why you want to receive on the back foot, or why you're looking to turn out that way, or play backwards to make the space, why are we doing it? Why? On my coaching points, the first thing I write on my session plan is the theme of the thing, and then the why underneath it. And that's the most important part to me. If the players, they might not get it, it might take us months to get what we're working on. If they know why we're trying to work towards it, then you we're in a good place straight away, because they understand the concept of it. And the final thing I'd say, you said about time, and you're dead right, but I think time can be quite variable compared to individuals, and you don't always realise how quick 30 seconds can go. But I think if you're talking to players more than a minute or so, you're probably going to have lost their attention. I mean, honestly, I do. And I don't think it's just a young thing. I think we might have spoken about this for another episode, but I think if you can't get in and out and get your point across in 30 seconds, you've got to think about a different way of getting your point across, because I'm not sure it's going to... Very few players are going to... There's a ball out there to go and play football with. They don't want to come listen to you lecture for a minute, 2 or 3 minutes, and that's a long time, 2 minutes, someone going on, and if you can't get it across that quickly, then think of something else. And there are tactics boards and things like that, and we use them quite a lot, and they get mixed reviews when we hear people seeing what we've got, but we don't write loads of stuff on them. It's not tactics and instructions, it's guidance, it's points, and it's things we spoke about over months, if not years, with these players. It's just reference points and stuff. So visual aids, different players learning different ways, use mini pitches, using the cone stuff, little micro pitch.
I've started to use those.
They're good, aren't they? Tactics boards, getting the players to do things. Just use a whole variety, embrace it all. But I'd say as coach, most of it is just practice these things.
Yeah, agree.
You reckon?
Good point. Very good points.
We've got to mention counter coaching because we said we weren't. Yes. We've got on well. So it's just this concept of counter coaching. So shall I briefly explain what I think it is? So the idea being here is, let's say you and I might work together. We're working on a team. You're the head coach, you're the lead coach, and I'm supporting you. And you're working on playing out from the back because that's the vogue thing to talk about, right?
Yep.
And you've got the yellow team and they're playing against the blue team. So you're working with your yellows to play out from the back. Well, I think historically the assistant coach would probably be there just assisting the best they can, supporting your points and doing the things. Then the idea of counter coaching is that potentially then in my role as assistant coach to you, I'd work with have you got the yellows? I've got the blues. Yes, I've got the blues. I'll work with the blues. So in the sense, not trying to kill your coaching points, because that wouldn't be beneficial at all, but just trying to make sure the blue team are kind of working in a way that allows the yellow team to be suitably challenged, but also to get the best out of the session.
Yeah.
So counter coaching. So I mean, it may be that we control the blue team, or I control the blue team in the way that just gives you the chance at first to get used to and familiar with what you're trying to do, and then we ramp up the effort out of the blue team, well, not the effort, but we ramp up the way we're playing just to make sure that we're challenging your team enough so you'll get in the most effective part of the session as you could, and then we'd switch around, and then you'd coach the blues and I'd coach yellows, but it's your topics that matter, it's your coaching points that matter, or I'm just kind of counter coaching the other team to make sure you get what you need out of it.
So that in that example, if I'm playing out from the back, you're as a counter coach, you would be asking your team to press me a little bit higher, to put me under pressure, make it game realistic and things like that. Is that fair?
Definitely. What I think my challenge would be to make sure that you're getting enough challenge to be able to get your points across, but not so much that it's killing the opportunity to do it, right?
Yeah.
So you'd hope that I can manage that. So it may be like, if we're doing a 5v5 and you're playing for the back, I might just let one player press to start with. We're going to press, you guys hold it. Just see what goes on, and we'll try that a few minutes stuff if that's okay with you as the head coach, And then as you get comfortable, it's too easy to get too early now. So I'm managing that game and talk about it and keeping them motivated and keeping them focused. So that's just one example of how you could use it, but it's just a way in which you're using your assistant coach to counter coach against the points in a controlled manner. I've never done it, to be honest with you. I've never used it that way before. I mean, we've got an assistant coach and we tend to kind of just work on the points and do things, but I've never thought about using that way, and I quite like the idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I've kind of never really thought about it that way, actually. I think it's a great idea. I think there's obviously, again, is that a bit of initial investment up front each week to make sure you're on the same page in terms of this is the training plan, which you should do, I think. And then it's then thinking through, actually, then how can the assistant coach help with the session in terms of being the counter coach, I guess. I think it's just having that initial investment to. And it'd be hugely beneficial.
Well, because what I think the reason I've not done it previously is because I don't often coach the two teams differently. I'm kind of working on the same thing with both teams, which maybe is a mistake. Or it can be. There's certainly certain practices that will lend itself better to doing things differently. But I think actually, if that enabled me to kind of focus my attention on the one team with the other coaches kind of supporting that to make sure that they're getting the best out of it, I think it would be something that could work well. And I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Yeah, it'd be great to maybe we can work it that I can come over and be the counter coach with your assistant coach as well, and we can try and
that would be
great to be involved in that.
Yeah.
But I think it also maybe leads in nicely to the collaborative training matches we spoke about, right? Because it's
kind of finish on that point.
Yeah, let's finish that because it's very similar along the same lines, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
And I know that we've both been kind of working in the background and trying to get this up and running.
Recap again. Just explain what CTMs are then.
So very quickly. So CTMs, which is I won't take credit for them because it's your fantastic idea. I know that's why you wanted me to say that, but anyway. I guess it is having like-minded coaches that can play that would work together to play a kind of a competitive game, but they would speak. I guess leading up to the game, they would speak. And they would agree on certain conditions that would go into the game. There would be, I guess, maybe some certain rules and things like that would facilitate the game to optimise the coaching points that you want to get out of that.
Yep.
I think, is that fair?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah. It's the idea being that it bridges that gap between what we're doing training and going to the matches. It's that bit in between there, so it provides a training game that's but very much like a match.
Yeah,
just because training in a certain way. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I guess the counter coaching point is almost doing that internally in your own space and training environment, where the CTM is kind of doing something similar, but actually working with unknown players, or playing against unknown players with another coach, kind of doing that. So it's just a step on from that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we've had some feedback, haven't we? We've had coaches reach out to us and say they think it's a good idea and interested. It's relatively local to us, where we are, which is great. A couple of people from overseas as well saying about things. So we're making some progress. Our intention is to try a few of these games out, right?
Yeah.
And just iron it out and see, does it work? It sounds great on paper. Let's iron it out and see if it works.
Yeah.
And then feedback on how we've used it. What's worked, what hasn't worked, and then if it all looks promising, try and create some kind of group thing that we can all share and dip into, where you've got coaches that are thinking the same way. You can find like-minded other managers or teams that want to give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as you said, we're kind of actively speaking to different teams now to try and get it organised, and hopefully in the next month or so it will come to fruition. We'll have some games, and we can feedback, and it'd even be great to get those coaches on that are part of those games, just to give a kind of, we could do a short 15-minute discussion with them just to get their views. Did it work? If it didn't work, why didn't it work? Kind of thing.
Definitely. And on that note, that if you are doing this out there, please let us know, because we can, if you're not local to us, we can record something over the internet, and getting the audio from you and your experiences. You can put it on an episode and we can play it to the people. And this isn't the Scott and Mark show. This is very much about us just trying to reach out to other coaches out there that are doing things that have or haven't worked. Please share, because you could save other coaches a lot of time and grief, and a lot of players a lot of poor experiences or some really good experiences by sharing the work that you guys are doing out there as well. Sound good?
Yep. Excellent.
All right, so thanks for that. So we covered a bit about, obviously, last episode with Kieran, which was great, a bit about England and the DNA and what we're doing tonight. We covered a bit about the formations and why we choose a 2-2 over anything else. So on all those points, please do shout if you've got different thoughts, opinions. We are more than happy to listen to those. We don't think we've got everything right by any stretch of the imagination, and there's always different thoughts on this stuff. So please let us know.
Yeah.
We spoke about interventions and counter coaching, and we didn't really go into massive details, but just the idea of this was just to plant the seeds around it. Please think about your interventions. So this week at training, the weekend, just think, what's the best way I can support my players with my contribution in the session, to not take anything out of it that's going to kind of undermine it, right? And keep them short and sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I said earlier in the episode, if there's any input around 9-a-side formations, please reach out.
Desperately needs help, or someone's to blame when it all goes wrong.
Exactly, yeah. Please reach out. It'd be great to hear from people. And in fact, any subjects, right? We're open in terms of what we kind of talk about.
It's football stuff mainly, but anything will do.
Anything will do.
Yeah, that'd be great. You can reach us on our Twitter feed, which is @SoccerCoachCast, and you can email us at info@thesoccercoachingpodcast.com. Sound good?
Perfect.
All right, have a good week, everybody. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you. Bye.